say what up, it's your brother from the ancient mother, VJ, with another Headspace album review. South African hip-hop has traveled eons and miles in its journey of finding itself. And when I say itself, I mean finding an identity within something which is pretty much an American expansion, pretty much an expression of the black experience from another side of the world, traveled through the power of media and reached the youth of this country. Now, the one thing that young people all over the world do when they come into contact with hip-hop is the first impulse is to mimic. This state of mimicry is what characterizes a lot of early hip-hop from many parts of the world. Whether you're talking the French, the Swedish, whether you're going into Palestine, what hip-hop has done as a movement is that it's created a mirror for young oppressed people to be able to literally mimic movements, ideas and expressions that seem to be in alignment with self-empowerment. Now, South Africa is no different. If we trace back our earliest forms of hip-hop, our graph writers, our breakers, our DJs, really what most of these young people were trying to do is their best rendition of what they saw from America. POC was very much Public Enemy from Cape Town. Ammunition and many of the rappers in JSEC were very much an amalgamation of what the New York boom bap rap scene was about. IAPTIS as a movement with MCs like Emphatic Tabs was very much mirrored after the abstract rappers who came and brought hip-hop into a more literary, openly conceptual and abstract place. Where am I getting to? These are phases. The phase of mimicry is sort of like the child in its infancy. But when the child is born, they are placed into an environment where they are forced to figure out how to adapt to their indigenous environment. And I'm going to take it into a musical and expressive level. Rap music in South Africa still has artists who are trapped in the mimicry, aka the infancy phase. Artists who are still very much in the belly of being formed and moved by Americanisms. Then you have artists who have, through the labor of love in time and art, birthed themselves and understood some of the direct repercussions about practicing art in a global space where your locality meets you forced before you even interact with anything beyond. And it creates that artistic dissonance where you say to yourself, how can I truly be myself and yet be inspired by the world? I'm reviewing an album by an amazing rapper. She goes by the name K KEED. Another progenitor of the very exciting Xhosa trap space which is happening, active in many parts around the Eastern Cape, but mainly really doing its thing as a movement in Cape Town. K KEED has an amazing sense of authenticity. She's got this ad-lib. Yeah, I like it. It's infectious. She has a voice which is distinct. She might remind you of a whole lot of other rappers, but she's very much in her own vocal and lyrical lane. So in that sense, she is very much her own MC. Bars for days, ability to really weave around trap that is memorable and marvelous. The beats in and of themselves, the sound, again, thoroughly inspired by a state which I will define as mimicry. Now K KEED does something here that I feel doesn't allow this project to reach its full gestation. It doesn't allow itself to truly be born, land in South African soil and become something authentic. In many of the tracks, she literally falls into the same pattern of rapping like an American, referencing things and adopting an accent which really takes her away from the immediate Kapa environment. And yet, there are shining moments here where she peeks at it, she jumps at it, and she plays for isiXhosa sakhe. A standout track is Izab. Just the way she says Izab is infectious. It's like, you know what that sounds like because we are all isiXhosa, a slang. You get an immediate place of whether it's a culture, you know, without say mother well, but you just get the township. And she's able to deliver it in a way where she still keeps that same finesse and originality, and yet she's in new territory. Tracks like Istori, her and Tikwala just tear it up. Because again, they're that unapologetic neo-Xhosa femininity up in your space. The young generation, I'm a 2000 Omhlaba, here to kill it all, here to take it all. Skim Sam is a posse track of note, thoroughly inundated with some of the best talents in the Xhosa rap wave right now. And yet even there, they do their thing. They splash it around with elements of authenticity that would make any American want to say, yo, who these niggas? And I want to say to K KEED, we don't get enough of this on this track, on this project. It's titled Alter Ego, and I didn't get why. Throughout the whole project, I'm trying to understand where the schizophrenic duality might be. Perhaps it points right into what I'm talking about. Perhaps K KEED is an artist still stuck in a place that most artists are stuck in right now. Most young rap artists in South Africa, I feel, are stuck in right now. This place of, I am inspired immediately by the world. So how do I translate myself into a version of myself that is true to where I come from, but can still relate to this rest of this universal body of art? It's a difficult decision to make, because you don't want to run so deep into your locality that you lose direct relationship with outside audiences. I'm going to give you an example. Rapping as Xhosa, or rapping in any language that is indigenous to South Africa, is more than just an artistic choice. It's a political choice. I mentioned earlier on in my GOAT series when I was speaking about Proverb, is that Proverb rapped in South African, even though he conveyed it in English. So again, my argument has never been vernac equals authenticity. My argument has been the references, the slang, because you know how the majority of people where you come from sound like. We have our own elements of aesthetic and culture and movement and rhythm that are unique to who we are. And through artists like AK Malum Cool Cat or Ricky Rick, we've been able to see artists who are able to do this beautiful dance of being global when they want to, and yet still doing it with a local heart, and being local as fuck when they choose to deliberately alienate any other audience, because this one is for their own people. And I think K KEED is still an artist who might still be asking herself that question. Hence, she's still altered in a sense of which ego really will take her forward. If you ask me, I say rap among is Xhosa. And I say when you want to rap in English, assimilate things about your slang and your culture that make sense to your immediate audience. Because the one thing we don't understand about global audiences is that it's mostly about the feel. You don't really have to be saying anything anybody can immediately register from the get-go. It's about how you embed yourself into your own culture through finesse and through a love of it. And I think maybe that's probably the crisis being experienced by a lot of AMA 2000. We live in a world that is so thoroughly syndicated and pays so much attention to what the global movement of people is about through social media, which are connecting us in the world over. And yet we are doing that in many instances at the expense of figuring out our own story, figuring out our own history, especially for the younger generation. I feel like a lot of homework needs to be done on their part to go back, to learn and to understand where they come from, because I feel like they're leaving gold mines behind and they are forsaking so many beautiful pathways that have been taken before them and simply just jumping directly to a global influence. And I think if artists like K KEED could learn from this long tradition of rappers that have done it before them, rappers in their own town, if they could learn what was it about Dreamans Cup, if they could learn what was it about Ben Sharper, if they could learn what was it about Confab, if they could learn what was it about POC, Ready D, and all of the Gap movement, whether you're going into the Afrikaans, whether you're going into his course, or whether you're going to rappers who choose to rap in English. If she can look into the legacy of Mr. Devious, if younger artists had this rich tradition and fed from it, I think we'd hear more music that is true to South Africa and at the very same time able to punch itself into the world with pride and says, we've arrived. All in all, the album doesn't reach this plateau. It's an album stuck in artistic mimicry. She hasn't really been born and landed emhlabeni and found out who she wants to be. Again, I think the alter ego alludes to that. She's trapped in a place where still trying to figure out who she is, and she's got every right to. She's young, she's exploring, she's learning, and for somebody her age doing hip-hop, I think this album clearly deserves a 6.5 out of 10. Because for every artist doing it right now, she has chosen to find her literal voice. She has chosen to listen to other rappers and find a space where she sounds like nobody vocally speaking. Perhaps the flows and the lyrics and the references are still stuck in a place that we've heard before, but voice alone, which is what the instrument of the rapper is. The rapper's instrument is the voice. K KEED has a unique voice. She's got a lot to say. She got something to say, and I'm very interested to see how much more she says it. And I, for one, really hope she finds how to jump into this place and find an ego to occupy that's able to make her the powerful MC I know she is. 6.5 out of 10, alter ego, which kind of also alludes to AKA's alter ego. Remember that? I think it would be a great way to connect the two by looking at Forbes in his inception of finding himself as a rapper and taking his colored identity, taking Bumzansi, taking his what was back then a very Jay-Z influenced direction, and finding a way to make it all work. That was a project which gave us the I Want It Alls. So from a project which is aptly, I think, named in the same title, I think maybe she needs to look at other rappers who are struggling in figuring out how their alter egos would work, because what we've learned from AKA is he chose the South African ego, and he chose to raise our flag high as himself. He's chosen to be for the Ginsers, he's chosen to be for the people with the fists up, he's chosen to be an artist which can be revolutionary from an artistic place, but still very thoroughly capitalist. You might say that's ironic, you might say it's a contradiction. I say it's very possible. I say K KEED, keep on moving, 6.5 out of 10. You will definitely get there, probably, if you figure yourself out. And as a matter of fact, that's life. I need to figure myself out. You need to figure yourself out. Headspace, you need to know what's up. It's Viwe, your brother from the ancient mother. Let's do this next time. Something happens at the end of this project. Yo, lump in my throat. Something happens at the end of this project which is very interesting for me. In a track called Dead or Alive, the ending is ushered into the distance by an incredible soundbite by what I think is the old lady K KEED, with a very touching voice note talking about, because of our grand, this might be the day that you make it. You've got all of us behind you, supporting you. And she says, "Ngalandlela, yo mama man, besixhosa sibaziyo. Uli olate, nozala." And it's a moment for me which I think really sums up what a lot of artists need to learn. Because in that moment, I felt like I connected with K KEED, because I know a mother. I have a mother. I know people with mothers who care for them in that way. This rap career has made a lot of people at odds with their parents. And to hear a parent figure give you that support and say, you know what, I might not understand what this is about, but I can tell that you are talented at it. And to say it in a way that feels like a South African mother. Those mothers we all know, Onozal. It was a moment for me where I feel like if K KEED could tap into that, it could create something that would borderline change the music into mimicry to mastery. And that goes for every other artist. Introducing us into these intimate aspects of your life does so much more for you as an artist, because we all go through very similar things. We were all born through parents. We all go through the human condition in variations of ways, being motivated by the will to be, the will to find ourselves in becoming. And I feel like it's an album which ended on such a note of possibility, which is why I can't front on the talent that is K KEED and the things that might happen tomorrow.